Title: The Dark Secret of Blackthorn. In the remote village of Blackthorn, nestled deep in the mist-covered hills, time seemed to move at its own pace. The small, isolated town had a history that went back centuries, but no one spoke of it. People in Blackthorn kept to themselves, and visitors were rare. Those who came often didn't stay long. There was something about the place, an unspoken tension in the air, an unsettling silence that seemed to hang over everything. Detective Clara Monroe had heard about Blackthorn only recently. She was a seasoned investigator in the city, known for her sharp mind and determination. But this case was different. The police had called her in when a young woman, Emily Reid, had gone missing. Emily was 32, a quiet and intelligent librarian in Blackthorn. She had no enemies, and there was no reason for her to disappear. One moment she was leaving work, and the next, nothing. Her purse was found on the side of the road, but Emily was gone. Clara arrived at Blackthorn just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets. The town looked ancient, with its crooked buildings and overgrown gardens. The fog rolled in thick from the forest, swallowing the town whole. It felt like the town itself was watching her, waiting for something. She parked her car outside the local police station, a small, dilapidated building with peeling paint. Inside, Chief Duncan was waiting. He was an older man with a weary face, his eyes tired from years of dealing with the strange events that seemed to plague the town. "Thank you for coming, Detective Monroe," Chief Duncan said. His voice was rough, as if he hadn't spoken much lately. "I wish we had more to go on. Emily was last seen leaving the library. Her bag was found on the road, but there were no signs of struggle. It's like she just vanished," Clara nodded. "Has anyone seen anything unusual in the days leading up to her disappearance?" The chief hesitated. "There have been rumors. People have talked about a shadowy figure, someone watching them from the trees or hiding in the alleys. But no one has been able to describe it clearly. It's always just a glimpse." Clara didn't believe in ghost stories, but the unease in the chief's voice was enough to make her wonder. She asked to see the library where Emily worked. The chief led her through the misty streets to the large old building. The air around it felt thick, almost heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Inside, the library was quiet. The shelves of books towered over Clara, their spines cracked and worn from years of use. It felt like time stood still here. Clara walked through the aisles, searching for any clue, any hint that could explain what had happened to Emily. The only sound was her footsteps on the dusty wooden floor. She stopped at the circulation desk where Emily had worked. The desk was empty, but Clara noticed a piece of paper left behind, half hidden under a stack of books. It was a note written hastily. Clara unfolded it. "If something happens to me, don't trust the town. Don't trust anyone. They'll come for you too. I found the truth. They'll never let me leave." Clara's heart skipped a beat. What truth? What was Emily trying to say? The words on the paper sent a chill down Clara's spine. She took a deep breath and turned to leave, but before she could reach the door, she felt a strange sensation, a coldness, as if someone was watching her. She spun around, but the library was empty. The silence felt suffocating. Clara stepped out of the library and into the foggy street. The world felt wrong, like a dream turning into a nightmare. The chief had said people saw things in the fog, shadowy figures that moved just out of sight. Clara had brushed it off as superstition, but now she wasn't so sure. She decided to walk the route Emily would have taken home. The streets were deserted, and the fog seemed to grow thicker the further she went. The old houses loomed on either side, their windows dark, like hollow eyes. Clara's footsteps echoed as she walked, each sound amplified by the stillness around her. As she passed the old church, she noticed something strange. The large wooden door was ajar, creaking slowly in the wind. Clara hesitated for a moment, then approached. She pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the church was cold, the air damp. It smelled of mildew and old stone. Clara walked down the aisle, her flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. At the altar, something caught her eye, a small, weathered book lying open. The pages were yellowed and strange symbols covered the text. It looked ancient, like a relic from another time. Clara's fingers trembled as she picked it up. The symbols seemed to move as she stared at them, twisting in ways that made her head spin. Her mind felt foggy, and she had to shake her head to clear it. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut behind her. Clara spun around, but there was no one there. The air grew colder, and the silence deepened. Then she heard a sound, a low, guttural growl coming from the shadows. Clara's heart raced. She turned her flashlight toward the sound, but it was empty. The growl grew louder, more distinct, until it was directly behind her. She spun around and saw something that made her blood run cold. A figure, tall and cloaked in black, its face hidden in shadows. It stood motionless in the corner of the church, watching her. The figure took a step forward, and the temperature in the room dropped. Clara's breath came out in clouds. She backed away slowly, but her feet seemed to stick to the floor. The figure spoke in a voice that echoed inside her head, cold and cruel. "You shouldn't have come here, detective. The truth is not for you to know. Emily found it, and now you will too." Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. She turned to run, but her legs felt heavy, like she was wading through water. The figure moved toward her, its eyes glowing faintly from beneath the hood. The darkness seemed to grow around it, swallowing the light from her flashlight. With a surge of panic, Clara forced herself to move. She ran out of the church, not looking back. The fog had thickened, and the streets seemed unfamiliar now. It was like the town was shifting, changing, as if it had a life of its own. The trees bent in unnatural angles, their twisted branches reaching toward her. Clara ran until she found herself standing in front of the old abandoned well in the center of the town. The well was covered in ivy, and the stone around it was crumbling, but something in its darkness called to her. As she approached, she saw a figure standing at the edge, staring down into the darkness. It was Emily. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Emily's eyes were wide, filled with terror. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lips moved as though she was trying to warn Clara, but Clara couldn't hear her. The ground beneath Clara's feet seemed to shake, and the air grew heavy. Then the earth cracked open, and from the darkness beneath the well, something terrible emerged. A long, black arm shot out, reaching for Emily, pulling her into the abyss. Clara screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the growing roar of the darkness. And then, silence. Clara found herself standing alone in the street, the fog surrounding her like a living thing. The town was still, too still. In that moment, Clara realized the truth. Blackthorn was not just a town. It was a prison built on ancient, dark forces that had waited for centuries to claim their next victim. And Clara was next.